And my name is Shelley Timmons, and I will be starting out this presentation. We are doing this as part of a disability advocacy and business partnership series. This presentation is on accessible web design and your business, and it's brought to you today by America's SBDC of the Virgin Islands, the United States Virgin Islands Economic Development Authority, whose platform we're using today, the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands, the University of the Virgin Islands, and VIEDA, Virgin Island University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. Our platform host, as I said, is Chanel Peterson. Perhaps you see her over to the right of your screen. We're so grateful to have this set up for us already. The platforms are frequently rotated between the partners, and we're just so thankful for Chanel and all of her hard work on this particular presentation. Our presenters today that you'll be hearing from are myself. My name is Shelley Timmons. I'm a doctor of physical therapy and an assistive technology professional. I work as the Assistant Director of Clinical Services, Research, and Grant Writing at the Virgin Island University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disability here at the University of the Virgin Islands. The bulk of our content today will be given by Jose Negron. He is an IT and assistive technology specialist. He's been doing IT since 1997, was it? 93, 91, I don't know, 90 something. He is presently working here also at the Virgin Island University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities at the University of the Virgin Islands. And we will hear also the bulk of our advocacy presentation will be from Gerard Evelyn. He works as a legislative aide in the state senator's office, Senator Whitaker to be specific. He is also a disability advocate, and he will be speaking to us as a blind user of the internet and the web, which will give us a really keen perspective. So let's start out with a brief definition of disability. Disability is any physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, their senses, or their activities, according to the Oxford Languages Dictionary. And activities in this instance that we're talking about today are going to be the activities of using the internet or the web. So from a business perspective, as business owners, we want to be cognizant when we're doing our marketing that 1 out of every 4 people in the United States has a disability. And that number is about the same here in the US Virgin Islands as well. This population of people who are disabled includes individuals with disabilities that make accessing web designs difficult without standardization or without special accessibility features put into place. Web accessibility allows businesses to expand marketing so that it can include people with disabilities, and it helps to capture that additional marketing for the business. It's good for the business. It's also good for the person who needs to access the web for their own purpose. It creates inclusion across the board. The W3C is something that if you are personally looking at making a web accessible site for your business, this is a really great resource. The W3C is also known as the World Wide Web Consortium. It is an international community that develops open standards to ensure the long-term growth of the web. And as Jose was explaining to me earlier, when the web first came out, Back in, I think, the 80s sometime, there were a number of different internets that could occur. And so this W3C came together and they helped to pull it all together so that there is one overarching internet with standards for the internet. It was formally established in 1994 by mandate with support from MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the INRIA, which I will not attempt to pronounce the French, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, of the United States, and the European Commission appointed by the EU. The INRIA and the DARPA are both agencies that support electronics, research of electronics and mathematics for different purposes throughout the nations. And the standards that they set included accessibility standards. So the W3C accessibility standards are described on the W3 site as such. The W3C Web Accessibility Initiative, WAI, brings together people from industry, disability organizations, government, and research labs from around the world to develop guidelines and resources to help make the web accessible to people with auditory, cognitive, neurological, physical, speech, and visual disabilities. So we're really glad that that together everyone has come to the table, people with disabilities, people from industries, etc., just like we're doing today. And we look forward to hearing just a little bit about what accessible web design is and looks like. For yourself, a good resource when you're making your own web content accessible can be found at www.w3.org. I would encourage you to look this up. There are many other places that we can discuss. At the end, there will be some question and answer and discussion time where you can ask the presenters, particularly Jose and Mr. Evelyn, questions and get some of your own questions answered, including perhaps where you can find resources to help you build out your own website. I'm going to pass it over to Jose now. Mr. Negron.
There we go. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for allowing me to give this short presentation. It's going to be very short because creating accessible documents and aiding in accessible websites takes a lot of work. Again, I've been working with UVI here for just over 20 years, and I started my IT field way back in college.
Jose, I'm going to stop you for just a moment. Your slides are not showing up.
Yeah, I haven't shared them yet.
Okay, no worries, no worries.
So I started my IT career way back in college where I was a lab monitor. From there on, I went on to work as a communications specialist in the U.S. Army, and from there I started working at the Roy Lester Snyder Hospital as a tech and a computer operator, is what it was classified as back then. And then I got a job here at the university as an IT specialist. That's my short version of the background that I have. In my presentation, which I'm going to start sharing now, let's share screen. Can you see that over there, Shelley? Okay, good. Accessible documents, these are the basics. Whenever you decide to make a document, whether it's in Word or any other platform besides Word, Microsoft, Office, we've always been taught to make these documents under a visual representation. So we see what we want to see, and we are taught what we want others to see. So we have that training ever since, you know, we started school, of making documents look a certain way, but not work a certain way. That's very bad for accessibility, because there are screen readers and narrators. These are different applications that have trouble interpreting documents correctly. For example, right now I'm using a PowerPoint presentation to talk about Word document association and correction. But hopefully it'll be able to translate visually, and if someone were to run a screen reader through this PowerPoint, then the screen reader will be able to read out loud in an order, okay, a structure, what is on the screen. Accessible documents basics. So tips. I'm going to give you about 5 or 6 tips to try to get you started in understanding the basics in creating accessible documents. The first one is, and I'm going to read these out right now, but we'll address them further down in the presentation, in the slides. Run accessibility checker and use structured formatting. Use proper color contrast, font size, and font type. Avoid tables and charts if at all possible. But if you must use them, then use images with alt text or alternate text. And we'll explain what that is in a minute. And then use the proper heading and titles. And this refers back to the way that the document is structured. Okay? Accessibility checker. If you are running a Microsoft Office suite, then it should be already installed. This is something that you can add. Before you had to add on, now it just comes installed. You just have to enable it or activate it. It's on the ribbon that goes across the top of the platform. So with Microsoft Word, where you see the menu that goes across, you have the file, home, insert, top, draw, design, transitions. You should have one of the tabs that says review. When you go to that review tab, you'll be able to see the icon, which is a little person with the document behind them, and the word check accessibility. What this does is, when you enable it, it gives you a small pane on the side of the document that will assist you in creating this document. It will tell you, or you will be able to see in like little note captions on the side, well, you know, this is not readable, this is not legible, this isn't associated with whatever is on the page. Now, the correct advice would be to have the accessibility checker running alongside while you're creating the document. That's not necessary. You can always go ahead and create your document, excuse me, and you can then run the accessibility checker, have it diagnose your or analyze your document, and then it comes up with a list of stuff that needs to be corrected, changed, or adjusted. The color contrast, as you can see on my slides, if you can see, that I have a light colored background with a dark colored font. This is to aid in users with poor visibility. So now I've made this presentation, I've made this PowerPoint presentation twofold. So it can be used with a screen reader or narrator, but someone that is visually impaired, that is not blind, they can see certain colors, they can see certain shapes, and they will be able to read and understand what's in the presentation. Now here I have some examples of the correct format that you want to use and the incorrect format. So for example, that first tile, it says it's important to have contrasting light and dark colors for low vision users, which is what we have right now. This can be a dark background with a light colored text or vice versa. Contrasting colors is what's very important, because if you run into someone that has a type of color blindness like myself, you won't be able to use a yellow background with green font, or vice versa. You can't use a bright green background with yellow font. It's just not readable to a lot of users. So the second tile below, you'll see that I have one where I can barely see it, but I know it's there, where you have the same, semi-dark colored or semi-light colored black background with a light font. And this is not, it reads, this is not the correct color contrast, and the font size is not appropriate. Let's talk about the font size for a minute. Font size has always been discussed as something that you strictly should adhere to a certain type of font. I find that to be arguable because it depends on what the user has for their visualization of the document. So for example, if I have a small monitor, then I would have to increase the resolution on that monitor so that I can see things larger. If I have a large monitor already, then maybe I have to decrease the resolution so that I can see the font better, or items on any part of the screen better. So as a standard, for argument's sake, it was decided that, at least in my trainings over the years, the minimum font size for a document that's going to be displayed on a screen or on a projection should be 20. Anything smaller than that, then users will have a lot of trouble reading it, seeing it, visualizing it. Not that the screen reader is going to have an issue. The screen reader isn't going to have any issues with the color or the contrast, but people that have low visibility, then they'll have an issue. And then on the right side, on the third tile, you'll see an example of a colorful object against a white background. Now, this colorful object is, of course, a flower, a pink flower with the light brown stem and, the green leaves. It's against a white background because it makes a contrast. So although someone may not be able to see it clearly, they will be able to see it and perhaps even identify it. So these are 3 examples of the type of font, color, and contrast that you want to have during a presentation. Let's see. Sorry, I can move that over here. What else I got? And next slide. Okay, so referring back to the area where charts and tables are used. Charts and tables are very difficult to work with, especially when you are creating or editing or modifying a document for a screen reader. Each table, each chart is different, but the way you address it is the same. You have to have the data input in alt text and identified using your screen checker, but it takes a long time to learn this. So it's a process. When I teach this stuff, I usually just go through the basics. I'll show you how to create a document, how to format it, set it up. Then we'll go back and we'll talk about creating alt text for images, and then we'll continue on to how you create and edit tables for this stuff. The easiest way that I found to have a document be portrayed, I want to say correctly, or workable, would be to have the table set up as an image. and in the image you add the alt text. Now, what is alt text? Alt text is a definition or a description of the image that is embedded into that document. Once your reader comes across the image, it automatically reads out what the image is about or what the image contains. If you can see here, I have set up this presentation, this slide specifically, with an image, and this image, once you have the mouse over the image, you'll see a pop-up. This pop-up is, I'm using it as an example of what a screen reader would say once it reads the alt text associated with this image. And it would say, well, the information that you put in there has to be very specific but short and precise. Image of a chart representing 5 columns and 4 rows. The data listed is, and then it would go on to identify what's in each one of those columns and in each one of those rows. It's very time consuming, but in the end, once it's done, and when it's used, it's very, very powerful, because it's giving more data in one image than in the whole document at the end of the day. So I have in the bottom here, it says the alt text for this image explains the number of columns and rows, which is what I just explained here and I read. And the alt text also indicates the values found in each of the intersecting cells. Once you have that information input set up, then you can save it and forget it, because it's going to be there until you edit it. In my next slide, so I mentioned at the beginning of all these slides, document structure and formatting. Why? Because we were taught to create a document way back in middle school, where you have your heading or your title, your heading, your paragraph would be your body, and everything has to be set up in a certain orientation. So you have your margins, you have your tabs, you have your indentation, you have your paragraph 1, and you have your continuing paragraph, and then you have your conclusion. That's all fine, but for someone who's blind, they don't know what is in front of them. So they would depend on that screen reader. Screen reader like JAWS, for example, is very expensive, but it's one of the more powerful screen readers available on the market. Windows, I think from Windows 7 on up, there is a narrator app that's also available on the operating system when you get it. And what it does is, once it's activated, it reads out everything that's on the screen in no particular order, unless someone is using the tab key or the mouse key, the mouse button, excuse me, to move through the document. When we are tasked with creating an accessible document, the structure is everything. So you will always need to use, the heading, the title, the paragraph body, in order to keep that structure, that formatting consistent. How do you do that? Well, there is a tab on Microsoft Word, that allows you to edit or just create your document according to the structure and formatting that is necessary. If you look at the ribbon, which is the big menu that goes across the top of your Word document, you'll be able to see where you have the file, home, productivity, all those other tabs. But when you click on the home tab, you'll be able to access the styles. Under the styles section, you will see the heading. It says heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. You'll be able to see the formatting of what will soon become an accessible document. This heading tab gives you options where you can adjust, you can change the way each one of those lines is created. But you can also set the size, the font, the color of the text. And this is a very powerful tool when you're going to create a structured document. And in my next slide, I'll show you an example of, there you go, of what the common body or the structure of an accessible document looks like. You'll always have the title of the document, whether it be a title that's off-centered or centered or offset to the right or to the left. That can be set up also, but you have to define the font size that you want for whatever document you're creating. The font color has to be defined. Most of the time, Word documents have a white background and a black font. The only time you will see an automatic change of color is if you decide to add a hypertext link. Then that hypertext link will change color. It would be blue. But the screen reader will be able to see it as it reads that sentence and indicate this is a hypertext link, and the web page that is associated with that hypertext link will be read out. Which is, if it's a long link, it'll go on for a long time. But going back to the document, you'll see here that you have your title, then you have your heading 1, and I'm identifying it here as heading 1 because it's what you are using in your styles selection. So heading 1 is most commonly known as heading, and then heading 2, which would be your subheading. If you are creating a very lengthy document where you would have different paragraphs in one page of the body, for example, this is the structure you would want to use. So you would always use heading 1 for the common heading, and any subheading after that would be heading 2. Then you would create your heading 3 you would create your paragraph using heading 3. When you finish that paragraph, if you are continuing under the original heading 1, the original heading of the document, then what you do is you create another subheading using heading 2. So you keep that format going throughout the document. That way the screen reader is able to identify these different parts of the document. And the user can continue by using the tab. They can click through the document and they know exactly where they are on that document. So it's very important to have this structure set up for their ease of use. As you can see here, then you have heading 3. It is normally considered the body of the document. It is intended to be read by a Windows narrator or any other screen reading application. Most applications will read the structure of the document in this order. If there is no structure, then there is no order to a document, and the user will not understand what the screen reader is saying. And this is so true. It'll just keep reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. So it's very important to use punctuations and structure. Okay? And that, my friends, concludes my portion of this presentation. However, I want to make very clear that these basics can be applied to PowerPoint, PDF files. If you're creating PDF files, it'll be a bit different for PDF files because they use tags, and each tag for each line and item is very different. So it takes a lot longer to edit a PDF file. For web pages, the structure is commonly used as well for websites because it's very important for screen readers to be able to identify different parts of a website. If you are navigating a website, for example, and you get a pop-up, the pop-up throws everything off because now it stops and reads everything that's associated with that pop-up. A user will it's frustrating. frustrating for people, with normal sight. But imagine for someone who has to wait through that whole ad to play through. It's very annoying. So it kind of throws off the whole navigation routine. For example, on my website, I'll never have a pop-up. I'll have an area that will identify an ad, but it won't be associated as a pop-up, for example. But I don't think I'll ever use pop-ups on any of my websites at all, simply because they're that annoying, they're that disturbing, they're distracting. So they take up a lot of valuable time and attention. This, my friends, is pretty much what I can cram into my, what was it, 10 minutes of my presentation. And if you have any questions, yeah, you can always reach out to me or Dr. Timmons, and we can always help out with some information.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jose. I can attest to Jose's ability to help work with us one-on-one. I've contacted him so many times about PowerPoint presentations. In fact, I gave him one of the first PowerPoint presentations that I attempted by myself because he said, "Oh, this is just awful." I said, "Well, you can use it as a before. Use it as a before example." I think I didn't realize myself until Jose began talking to me, some months ago about this, that designing a website is essentially, when we design our websites, we're using documents. And so knowing how to do an accessible document is the foundation for putting together an accessible website. And so thank you so much, Jose. And now I would love to introduce Mr. Gerard Evelyn. Again, he works for the state legislature, and he is an end user. He's going to be speaking to us as an end user of accessible web design himself, or perhaps, as he may share, sometimes not so accessible. But we want to hear from Mr. Gerard Evelyn, who is blind and will be able to speak to us as someone who is blind, and how he uses these things. So thank you so much for being here and speaking to us today. Mr. Evelyn, I'm going to let you take it away.
Hi, good afternoon. And Jose, thanks for those tips. We need to share that to a lot of government agencies.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get the word out. It's not easy, because it's hard to work one-on-one with government agencies, and I'm trying to get the word out. That's why I'm trying to get my web page as spread out as possible, because I'd love to get the information out there and help the community.
Great. Well, my experience as an end user, being blind, or as they technically say, visually impaired.
Yes.
I'll give you guys one experience I had just a couple of weeks ago. I have VIEDA for my internet, service. They went in, I guess sometime this year, probably was March, February, and they changed their payment portal. Right? So now the payment portal is no longer accessible for me. So I tried to navigate. I tried every part of my computer, my iPad, everything, trying to find where I need to go to put in my payment, all that stuff. I couldn't get it done. So I called in and I made my payment. And then a couple of weeks later, my internet got cut off. And they were like, "You didn't pay." I said, "Yes, I did." So thankfully, my bank sends me emails and text messages every time I use my card. So I was able to find the information to give them to prove that I paid. So they had to turn back on my internet and all that stuff. That was just one, messed up part of being visually impaired. and not having people changing websites without the visually impaired community in mind. Because there are a lot of us out there that we use the internet despite being visually impaired. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I mean, I use the internet. So when these applications, web pages are not accessible, it's very frustrating, especially something like a public utility, like, your internet provider, you know? And then we have like for instance, if I go on the legislature website and try to read a bill, it comes up saying image. The PDFs that they have stored on, is not stored in an OCR format. So therefore, it's not readable for someone like myself, you know, and it becomes a bit frustrating, especially when you do work at the legislature and you have to do research. It creates a problem, and then there's other stuff like websites, shopping websites, Walmart, um, Amazon. They do their upgrades. They change up the format of the website. Then it instantly becomes inaccessible to your screen reader. Another thing that you mentioned, pop-ups. I have experience going on a website. I wouldn't name the websites I went on, but I went on the website and here comes a pop-up. Through the screen reader completely off. Then, I had to like stop it, go back over again, stop it, go back over again, and kind of like try to pause it and try to scroll down using my left and right to like try to get a handle on what's going on the screen, which the pop-ups makes it very confusing for the person who is visually impaired. A lot of people, they like their pretty websites. They have all these fancy things on the websites, but when they put all that stuff on there, it wreaks havoc for your screen reader and makes it not able to read or transfer the information you need when you go on the website. I could name a whole bunch of different stuff, but we only got 10 minutes. So any question? Hello?
Thank you. I have a question.
Hmm.
So I would like, I know you shared a little bit about this with me,
Hmm.
but if you can share with the audience as well, how many years have you been using accessible web resources, or when did you go blind, and did you use the web before you were blind, or
Yes,
this
yes.
did you learn it along the way in accessibility feature?
Well, no, I used the web before I went to OCR is optical recognition.
Okay. Mhm.
Um, I use the website, I mean the internet, the computers with vision, and it was challenging using it without vision. I mean, still right now, I'm using a iPad. I have a MacBook Air that I'm training on, and that's fairly difficult.
Okay, so it's different
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
computer. All right.
yeah. It's
The iPad.
different. Yeah, it's different. The voiceover is the way you control the voiceover on a Mac is different to the way it works on a iPhone or iPad,
Interesting.
which I found that out um, firsthand.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's
So
neat. Neat information. But yeah, I can
y-
see that would make things difficult. Now, Mary Jo, did I see your hand raised? Mary Jo Williams joins us from the Virgin Island SBDC. She's one of our partners for this presentation. And I think I saw your hand raised, Mary Jo.
I did raise it, but I lowered it after Mr. Evelyn answered the question, what is an OCR?
Okay.
yeah,
Thank
optical
you.
character recognition. Yeah. Yeah. What
So,
happened is you can, if you have a scanner with that built in, if you're scanning documents to like save in the cloud, you can save it under that, and then someone who is visually impaired can actually read it. So you have to save the setting, put the setting on your printer scanner if you're gonna scan it into to save it on your drive.
but I do have a question since you answered that question. How did you
Mhm.
know I had typed what is OCR in the chat?
Because you see, I have headphones on.
Mhm.
Everything that you guys type in the chat reached into my ear.
Very good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's one of the things about being blind. Everything reads to you, so that's why I always wear headphones when I'm working on a computer or my iPad.
Okay, I have a question. As far as reading rate goes, so do you read visually? I mean, auditorily, do you read auditorily faster than the spoken voice?
Sometimes I would speed up the reading. You know, like if I'm reading a book, I would speed up the voice. If I'm doing, you know, a document for work, I slow it down a bit so I could get, you know, I could take in more the gist of it slower, because when I'm working, there's a whole lot of information I have to ingest. But when I'm reading a book, like a novel or anything like that, from the library for the blind, I could speed it up and still understand what's going on. But when I'm doing it for work, which I need to retain more, I would slow it down a bit.
Great. So I don't know how many of us here on Zoom have found the settings on things like YouTube or you know, any of these reading or presenter sites that can speed up the voice. I have read that you know, we can typically visually scan and read up to 500 words a minute or so. I'm sorry, yes, approximately 250 to 500. But auditorily, a person who's taking information in auditorily, we speak at a much slower rate than we're capable of reading with our eyes. However,
Mhm.
a blind person is able to you know, tune in and really train the brain to listen as fast as we would visually read, so that what might sound super squeaky and not make much sense to someone who's not used to it can actually make perfect sense to someone whose ear is trained to read.
Well, my normal speaking rate on a daily basis is up to 80%.
Okay.
So people hear the phone going, they're like, you understand that? I'm like, yeah. Like, but I don't understand nothing. I said, not for you to understand.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But that's a way that, you know, blind people use that as a way to, you know, hide stuff, you know, from people's ears. Because if it's reading slow, you could understand the message or whatever comes through, you know, through the device if you're next to them. If it's reading fast, you know, it comes out so fast and so quick that they're like, what was that? but then you already picked it up and you know what it said.
Oh, I have a question for you, Gerard, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So, when it comes to accessible documents, have you had any issues with PowerPoints in the past, or Word documents that were not created correctly?
Yes. Yes, I've had
How have you navigated around that issue?
very gingerly. You know, you try to find a way to. What I do is I change the roller action on my device
Right.
to try to go line by line, space by space, you know, to get the information. But it's a tedious task when you have to do that. So when it's not created correctly, it creates problems for me.
Now, how often have you encountered unaccessible documents versus accessible documents?
Almost on a daily basis. I work in the legislature.
So most of the documentation that you receive is unaccessible, but
Yeah,
the screen reader tries
some
to
of
read
them.
it out.
Yeah, some of them is unaccessible. But the screen reader, it picks it up, but it's not uniform.
Exactly.
Okay, so
So
yeah, it
how
does.
how would you emphasize how would you emphasize how important is the structured formatting of a document for you?
Very important. Very,
Is
very
that
important.
is that the heading 1, 2, 3 that you were showing us, Jose?
Yes, yes. Each document, besides containing a title, each subject heading, right, should be addressed according to the importance. And the styles tabs allow you to do that, where you have your heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. You know, the reader interprets these things and lets the user know this is a title, this is a document heading, and you know, this is the subject matter of that paragraph, and so on and so on. And if you omit using that structure, it becomes very confusing for the user to understand what's in front of them.
Exactly. It's almost like you're trying to read gibberish.
Yeah, because it runs
So,
straight through and you don't know if you're still in the same paragraph or you're at the end of the document.
right. Exactly.
Okay. I'm thinking, Jose, that the next time you do this presentation, or we do this presentation, Mr. Evelyn, we would like to hear, I'm thinking I would like to hear what the end user is hearing, just maybe as a comparative. You know, so because I'm, you know, I'm receiving the information of what you hear, but I'd like to actually experience it. I think it would maybe bring it home for all of us. I'd like to know if the audience has any questions that they would like to ask Mr. Evelyn, myself, or certainly Jose. Mr. Evelyn or Jose would be, they're here, and it's a great time to get any of your inquiries answered. And there's no need to be shy.
Don't be shy. I don't bite.
Okay. Did I see Miss Taylor? You want to speak, Miss Taylor?
Good afternoon, my name is VIEDA, and if you have a question, I just would like to Mr. Jose to share his contact information as possible.
Oh no, I'm having a very difficult time
Yeah,
hearing what
having
you
a
have to
hard time
say.
hearing your question.
Yep. Are you able to put your question in the chat?
Hi, is that better? Can you hear me a little bit better
Yes,
now?
Oh, that's
that's
beautiful.
perfect.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. My name is Eva Taylor, and it's not a question. I would like to know if Mr. Jose can kindly share his contact information.
Yes.
But yeah,
Jose, if you can put your contact information in the chat.
yeah. I think I replied directly to Ms. Taylor already, but any VI you said assistive technology related questions can be addressed to me at jnegron, that's JNEGRON at uvi.edu. And email is always the best way to get me because inside and outside of the office on a daily basis.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't see your information because by somehow I was knocked out of the meeting.
Oh,
And when you come back in, the chat, that the information that is sent directly to you is lost. I can only see what it's in the general chat.
okay. Yeah, well, no worries. So yeah, it's my email is jnegron at uvi.edu.
Thank you so very much.
Anytime.
Jose speaks two languages, English and Spanish. I have a question about accessibility in the Spanish language. How does that work with Word and Apple?
Well, I mean, I don't know, was that addressed to me?
That's addressed to you, Jose.
Okay, yeah. Well, it depends on the user. So commonly, we refer to our operating system as our native language, right? Mine, for example, here at work, I have my computer's operating system. I have my language set to English. But if I were to, and I've done different work for clients where their computer was set up to be in Spanish, and I've actually had to. I was hired out to do a small training for accessibility to a company that needed their Spanish users to be taught how to create an accessible document. And this was a company out from Puerto Rico. They did this through my personal website. So I'm a native Spanish speaking St. Tomian, right? I'm from Puerto Rico. I was born in Puerto Rico, but I was raised here. But it's the same. It's essentially the same formatting, the same structure, the same instructions. The only difference is that now the screen reader that you're using is designed to speak in your native language. So it would be French, Spanish, or English. But the structure of the document would be the same structure, the same formatting.
Okay, thank you. I see a question in the chat from Mary Jo at VISBDC asking, where is the accessibility tab in Windows 10? Jose, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. So there's no accessibility tab per se in Windows 10, but there is an accessibility option. Now, the accessibility tab that you're probably referring to is in Microsoft Word. So if you open up Microsoft Word and you go to across the top where you have your file menu, it says File, Home, Productivity, Insert, Draw, etc. You'll find a tab that says Review. If you click on the Review tab, might be the second, third, or fourth tab that you have accessible in the ribbon. It's the Accessibility tab. So when you click that, you'll be able to open up the reader on the right side. I hope
Interesting.
I hope that's what you were referring to there.
Does that answer your question, Mary Jo?
That answered the question, but I don't see it.
Okay, give me a second. I'll share my screen.
And I do want to say, just to be aware of people's time, we have 3 minutes left. We're happy to stay. I don't want to take Mr. Evelyn's time beyond what he has available. I know, I think we're willing to stay a few minutes beyond the time, but certainly if people need to get off of the presentation, we understand that.
Okay, so if I open up my, can you see my screen there?
Not yet.
Let's see, share screen 1.
There we go.
Okay, so in your Windows operating system, you have Office, the Office suite. It depends on which Office suite you have. I'm using Office 365. So in Office 365, you'll be able to open up any document. So I'm going to open up a blank document. And if you can see here across the top of my menu bar, I have my menu bar that goes across. That's the first line. The second line is the ribbon. If you go across to the right where you have your review tab, it says you click on the review and automatically the ribbon changes and you have the different areas. And 1, 2, the third one on my document handler is the accessibility tab. So you can click on the little icon here and it opens up the accessibility pane on the right side. You can adjust the size for that. Where as you are creating your document, you'll be able to see any information on the right side that needs to be adjusted or corrected. Does that work for you there? Was it Mary Jo?
Yeah, is that good, Mary Jo?
Okay, I was using the desktop version. It's different, but I put it in the question mark and it came up on the side. So thank you.
Okay, good.
And not all
I
versions
found
are
it.
the same. I know my desktop and my web-based are different with a number of features, including the accessibility feature. Oh, thank you, Jose.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else want to ask a question or have a comment? We have just another minute left, I see. We're so happy that each of you joined us. Again, I want to thank Mr. Gerard Evelyn for coming and speaking to us as an end user, Mr. Jose Negron for speaking to us as an IT specialist. I want to thank all of our partners who have joined together to make this series possible. The SBDC, the EDA, thank you for hosting the platform for this site, the Disability Rights Center, and then of course we're looking forward to seeing you again. There will be just keep your eyes out, and there will be more lunch and learn presentations for businesses to increase awareness of disability for the purpose of marketing and creating an inclusive society. Thank you so much for everything that you do as business owners as well. We appreciate it.
And just as a small note, because someone did ask again, thank you, Dr. Timmons. For folks who want the recording, this is going to be available on VIEDA's website, usvieda.org/webinars. And for all of the registrants, you should also be receiving the slide deck presentation via email and possibly a quick survey. So be on the lookout for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.